Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Dr. Chanda, and you are now listening to the Paging Dr. Chanda podcast, where we talk about mental health and the culture, and we're promoting self-reflection through meaningful conversations. Y'all, I am your host, Dr. Chanda, and I am here with you yet another week to talk about mental health, our emotions, how we show up in the world to our family, our friends, coworkers, loved ones, everyone, in order to help us to live a better and more whole life. So again, I'm excited to be here. If you haven't done so already, I need you to follow the show through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. You can also listen to it exclusively on the Revolt Podcast Network, which is anchored in hip hop and powered by creators. Y'all know I'm still excited about joining this network, so y'all gonna keep hearing about it. Make sure that you guys text podcast to 21000 so that you can stay up to date with everything that we're doing with Revolt, as well as our upcoming celebration for signing our contracts for the Revolt Podcast Network. Y'all, it's another week. And I'm excited. I think I want to just hop right into this topic that we're discussing because it hits so close to home, very much close to home. And so, one thing that I've been talking about to you guys is the importance that I felt regarding taking a break due to feeling overwhelmed and really intense emotions that I was experiencing earlier in the year. Y'all really showed up for me and really had my back during the time where I did take a break. But one thing that I learned during that break is the importance of accepting emotions and feeling emotions, right? Accepting emotions. And so really when reviewing this topic and kind of acknowledging where I was and still am in life and really processing things like, grief and anxiety and things of that nature, it really kind of, it dawned on me that I can't be the only one that experienced difficulty when doing this, like accepting the emotions that I'm feeling. So I wanted to talk to you all about it because I can imagine there are some people out there who might be engaging in emotional avoidance, who might be suppressing their emotions, who might be distancing themselves from what we deem as negative emotions in society, but in actuality, there is no such thing as a negative emotion. All emotions serve a purpose, right? So when we talk about negative emotions in this podcast, what I'm talking about is those intense, significant emotions, things that you feel but you don't want to feel, like sadness, fear, grief, like all those emotions are what we label as like the intense, significant emotions. And so when I was thinking about this topic and what I wanted to share with y'all, what came to me is this concept of acceptance, right? And so in the Black community, when we accept that something is the way it is, we literally say that, listen, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. So in our community, that is a Black colloquialism that we tend to utilize when we are just accepting the state of something. We are accepting that, it just happened this way. It transpired this way. I'm feeling this way. So today's episode is called It Is What It Is. We're talking about our emotions, right? We're talking about accepting our emotions, even the ones that we don't want to feel. So some of you might be asking, why do I need to accept? Why do I need to feel intense emotions like sadness and grief and anxiety and fear, like all these things that I don't want to feel? So let's hop right into it. We're talking about why this is important. Number one, because of the nature of our emotions. The nature of them, right? So for those of you who, might not understand regarding emotions, every emotion under the sun has a function. They all serve a purpose. As human beings, it was never intended for us to always feel happy 100% of the time. It was never intended for us to feel sad 100% of the time. A part of our human nature is the fact that we have a plethora of emotions, and we are expected to experience those emotions. We're expected to feel those emotions. But the problem is when we feel things that are more intense, our automatic go-to is we want to distance it. We wanted to separate ourselves from it. However, a part of the purpose of experiencing emotions is, it can let us know when it's time to protect ourselves. Two, it can let us know when it's time to retreat into ourselves and kind of to really tend to our emotional needs. Like, for instance, when you're feeling sadness, right? Emotions can let us know when it's time to set boundaries with people or set boundaries in settings and places, right? So everything that you're feeling tells you something. It signals your body in some way, shape, or form. It has a function. So distancing yourself from that is not healthy. And you were never intended to not feel these emotions. Our intent as humans is to experience the wide range of emotions and to allow them to exist. All right. Number 2, there are consequences of avoiding negative emotions. Dr. Chanda, what do you mean? I don't avoid any of my emotions. Let me give you a scenario. So let's say you're experiencing some level of anxiety and your go-to is to drink alcohol to avoid this. Let's say that you're experiencing a breakup and you're experiencing grief and loss as a result of that, and your go-to is to smoke. Let's say that you are, experiencing a hardship in your life and your go-to is to engage in other means of unhealthy coping, such as, acting out or to spend excessive amounts of money, which is a thing that people tend to do in order to avoid emotions, to act out even sexually as a form of avoiding emotions. Like all of these things are emotional avoidance strategies. They're emotional avoidance tactics. And one thing that we must realize, especially in our community, in the Black community, is that oftentimes a lot of us are conditioned to suppress how we're feeling. Oftentimes a lot of us are conditioned to distance ourselves from how we're feeling, even from an ancestral standpoint, right? When we're thinking about the enslaved period, when we're thinking about our ancestors who were not allowed to feel emotions, who were not allowed to express emotion. They had to continue to work through turmoil, continue to work through trauma, and those same types of behaviors and ideologies were passed down from generation to generation. We are literally operating from a trauma-based response when we choose to separate ourselves from our emotions. That is rooted in a trauma. And so when we tend to do this, we're not giving ourselves the grace to allow ourselves to be human, and we're doing more harm to ourselves than good. Not only is unhealthy coping mechanisms just detrimental to your being as a person, right? So again, if I'm feeling these difficult emotions that's hard for me to feel, and my go-to is to smoke or to drink or what have you, then I'm not giving myself the opportunity to feel and to understand what these emotions are telling me. I'm also sending a message to my body that these emotions are too intense for me to handle, therefore I need to separate myself from them, which in turn can create a cycle in yourself, right? It can reinforce the pattern of whenever Chanda experiences this emotion, that she has to distance herself from it. And that's how patterns are developed. That's how disruptive patterns of coping are developed. That's how people begin to engage in excessive substance abuse or engage in acting out behaviors as a result of distancing themselves from emotions, because we literally told our brain, made that connection in our brain that these emotions are too intense for us to handle, therefore we need to do something else to distract ourselves from feeling them. That's problematic. That's problematic. That's not productive in any way, shape, or form. But also from a survival standpoint, right? You feeling as though this is helping you to survive, but in actuality, this is only diminishing you as a person. Like even from a physical standpoint, when people distance themselves from emotions, when they suppress how they're actually feeling, people begin to experience the physical effects of those emotions. Because let's keep in mind, emotions don't just go away, right? So if you're distancing yourself from feeling what you're feeling, it can lead to increased stress, increased anxiety, which can also lead to high blood pressure, heart disease, ulcers, right? Difficulty in the digestive system, GI difficulty. Like there are so many different things from a physical standpoint that this can lead to. That is why it is important for us to really start accepting and embracing the emotions that we feel in its totality. Not just the good days that you're having, because that's easy, right? If I'm feeling happy, I'm going to feel that emotion. I'm going to accept it. I'm going to want it to last for as long as possible. But because I am human, I am going to have sad moments. Because I am human, I am going to have moments where I am fearful. Because I am a human, I'm going to have moments where I'm feeling guilty or feeling upset. Like I'm going to have those emotions. And by distancing myself from them, I am not allowing myself to fully function as a human and feel those emotions. I'm not giving myself that opportunity, which can lead to detrimental side effects from an emotional and physical standpoint. Also, we must keep in mind that there is power in accepting our negative emotions. There is power in accepting our negative emotions. And so there was a specific article, and I said negative, my apologies, I mean significant emotions. So there was an article that was written by the Bronfenbrenner Center for Translational Research. I wanted to make sure I got that right. The Bronfenbrenner's Translational Research Center. So they developed an article about accepting significant emotions. And one of the things that they had highlighted is that there is a significant amount of power that we give ourselves when we allow ourselves to feel what we're feeling. Right? To feel those emotions that we wanna yes, your initial reaction might be to distance yourself from it. Yes, your initial reaction might be to separate yourself from it, but the more you give yourself the ability to lean into it and engulf yourself in it, not saying you have to stay in that place, but we're saying just feeling it for a moment, it allows you to accept this as a healthy alternative to avoidance. So instead of avoiding it, a healthier alternative is to feel it and accept it. It also allows you to acknowledge the presence of these emotions without judging yourself, right? I know many of us have experienced self-judgment before. Many of us have experienced, feeling as though, and for those of you who might not know what I mean by self-judgment, let me just give you an example. When we're having an emotional response and we say things like, I shouldn't be feeling this way. Why am I saying this to myself? Why am I still in this place? You were literally at the point where you're judging yourself at that time. Instead of allowing those emotions to just be. Instead of allowing yourself to feel. Right? You are judging yourself. So to accept those significant emotions means that you are also standing in a place of non-judgment to yourself, in a non-judgmental space, and allowing yourself to just be a human. Because humans have emotions. So when you allow that space to be a human and to show up in this dynamic way and in all these different areas of emotions, then you're giving yourself that permission to actually have those moments where you're feeling gray. Have those moments where you're not feeling the best, and acknowledge that that is totally okay. Because what isn't okay is to have one state of emotion 100% of the time. That is not... it was never intended for us as humans to experience that. It was never intended for us as people to have one specific emotion our entire lives or throughout the whole day. We're designed to experience the fluctuation of emotion. So it's about how we are accepting them. There are also positive effects of emotional acceptance, right? So, and specifically when it comes to our well-being and our quality of life, research actually tells us that the more we're able to accept our emotions, even the harsh ones, even the ones that I don't want to feel, the better it is for my well-being as a person. And so I want y'all to keep that in mind. The better it is for your overall well-being as a person. That means that the more you distance yourself and separate yourself from those emotions, the more trouble you'll have in terms of the quality of life that you live. Right? The feelings that you have, even when the feeling subsides, like that, it's going to be a lot more difficult for people. So it's really important for us to develop this state of emotional acceptance, accepting where you are emotionally. And lastly, being able to accept emotions that are difficult, that are really significant and powerful. Essentially, it builds up a sense of emotional resilience. Emotional resilience. And that's another concept that was brought out in this article that I had told you about. Emotional resilience, right? So being emotionally resilient, if you think about a rubber band, right? So if you think about the way in which a rubber band is developed, so the more stretchy it is all based on the pruning process. So when you're making a rubber band, it relies heavily on heat to be able to be more flexible, more like to roll with the punches essentially. So that means that the more you're able to feel the heat of your emotions, if we can use that metaphor, to feel your emotions, it makes you more resilient. The ability to bounce back like a rubber band. So again, when we say accept emotions and to feel them, we're not saying stay in that place, but we're saying to feel them. Allow yourself to go through the process of having them, which will essentially build up that level of emotional resilience and to allow you as a person to experience even more difficult things in life and to be able to bounce back from it. So I hope that was helpful for you. Listen, that was helpful for me even talking through it. So I'm so grateful that you guys chose to be with me yet another week as we were discussing emotional avoidance and knowing how to accept emotion, because it is what it is. I'm your host, Dr. Chanda. Don't forget, you have the power to create the emotions that you want to experience. Check us next week on the Revolt Podcast Network, anchored in hip hop, powered by creators. That was 15 minutes. I'm all done. That was a short episode.
No problem.